Okay, hi everyone. Welcome back to our little look at psychology for sport this week. So we've been working through self-awareness the last few weeks. So working out what we think about ourselves and how we view ourselves. And we've been doing lots of little games and questionnaires, how we think about our stroke techniques, how we think about our race preparation, how we think about racing. And I know that you should have all by now picked between 1 and 3 areas that you're going to work on over the coming weeks and also on the return to swimming. So what we're going to do now is give you some strategies that you can put into place to help you work on those areas for development. So the first week that we're going to look at these strategies, we're going to look at self-talk. So today we're going to look at self-talk. It's quite a big topic, and I'm just going to break it down quite simply to begin with into 3 areas. You can go a lot deeper into this. As with all psychology topics, they are huge. So we're just scraping the surface at the moment of the psychology topic of self-talk. So today we're going to look at what is self-talk, what can I use it for, ways I can use self-talk. So we're going to be looking at the whole cycle of what it is, how I can use it, and which ways can I use it. So there's different methods that you can use, basically, different methods you can use of self-talk. So today you've got some tasks, as per always. There's quite a lot of sheets with the psychology this week. But basically, I'd like everyone to do self-talk, self-awareness questions, because that gives you a good indicator of where you are with self-talk. Some of you might already do it quite a lot. Some of you might do it already quite a lot without even realising. So it might be an area that you think, actually, I'm quite strong at this after doing the self-talk questions, awareness questions. And you might actually pick something from the following week that you're going to really pick up and focus on for your psychology goal. So we're going to do the questionnaire. Then we're going to have a little look at reframing. Okay, now we'll explain this all a little bit more later on. And then we're also going to look at affirmations. So for squads 1 and 2, everyone needs to do 1. Then you can choose 2 and or 3. Okay, so you can either do 2 or 3, or you can do both of them. It's completely up to you. You can have a little look at them, see which one you think would work better for you. For squads 3, 4 and 5, I would suggest having a little go at the questions and then having a look at reframing, because that's quite a good and easy one for you to do. So this is what we're going to do today. Okay, so let's have a little look at what is self-talk. So we all self-talk, we all do it, probably without not even realising most of the time. But it's our thoughts, our inner thoughts and our feelings. So I don't know, you might have spent the day with friends all day, talking out loud your inner thoughts and feelings. You might be telling them, oh, it's amazing today, the sun's shining, I feel really happy, I'm going to get out on my bike. You say these things out loud. Self-talk is just when you internalise that thought process, and instead of speaking it out loud, you think it to yourself in your brain. So you might look out the window and it's raining and you think, oh gosh, it's a rainy day today, isn't it dreary and sad outside? It's really dark and gloomy. Ugh. And that's how you're thinking, and that's how you're feeling. You're feeling a bit gloomy and a bit ugh. So you've internalized it. Rather than saying it out loud, you've said it inside. It might be that you're walking into an exam at school or a test, and in your head you're thinking, oh my goodness, I'm really scared, I didn't revise this, I didn't revise that. Or it might be that you think, oh, I'm really ready for this, I've done the best I can, I've just got to go and do it, this is going to be really positive, I can do this. So it's what's going on in your head, really, your thought process and how you're feeling. So self-talk can be positive. So like I just said, it could be that I'm going into a test, an exam, and I'm feeling really good. I know I've revised everything I can. I know that I've done everything I can to be ready for this test. I'm feeling good. I'm ready to do it. I'm confident and I'm sure I'm going to pass. So you're really positive. Or you could be in your brain thinking really negatively, oh my goodness, I know that my friend's done loads more revision than me. I know I haven't done enough. I didn't revise this topic. It's bound to come up. Oh my goodness, I'm feeling quite stressed. I'm a little bit worried. I'm not going to pass. So quite negative. So you could be positive in your thoughts and your self-talk, or you could be negative. You could be quite rational, or you could be quite irrational. So you might be out for a lovely walk, nice stroll outside, and a man runs down the road opposite you. Your rational thought process might be, oh, that man's out for a jog today. Your irrational thought process might be, oh my goodness, why is that man running down the road? Has he just robbed a bank? What's going on? It's a bit strange. He's just run off really quickly. He looks a bit suspicious. So you have a rational thought process and an irrational thought process. You have a constructive thought process and self-talk, and a destructive thought process and self-talk. So constructive might be, wow, I really didn't like that workout. The flutter kicks were really hard. However, I know that that's my area for development. I need to work on that because it's going to really benefit my core or my kicking. Destructive would be, that was a load of rubbish. I can't do it. I can't do it. I won't ever be able to do it. I'm never going to do it again. There's no point in me doing these workouts. It's just all rubbish. So quite destructive in your thought process. Just, get rid of all those ideas and thoughts. Then we've got appropriate and inappropriate thoughts. So an appropriate thought might be, I didn't really enjoy that, but I know I've got to work on it. An inappropriate thought might be, that's pants. That's it. It's quite inappropriate. Okay? So self-talk is the way we internalise in our heads our thoughts and our feelings and how we talk them through to ourselves. So these talk, that is self-talk, these thoughts and these feelings that we go through in our own heads can be positive or negative, rational or irrational, constructive or destructive, appropriate or inappropriate. Okay, so self-talk is a set of evaluating thoughts, of a set of thoughts that you have, and then the facts that you come up about those thoughts. And it's also described as a way of overcoming anything that is negative. So it could be that you think about a race, oh my goodness, 800 meters is so far, it's so hard and so long, I will never make that. That is your evaluating thought of the event. And then you might use self-talk to change that thought and to replace the negative thought with a positive thought. So self-talk is quite complicated. You have to understand the process of your inner thoughts before you can really understand self-talk and to use it. So it's quite a complex system. So we're going to have a little look into a little bit more detail. It's a circle of events that happen. So I've tried to put the circle of events up on the board. I've done this to help remind me as well as we talk through it. So the first thing that happens are your thoughts. So you create connections and fulfill a function and solve problems with your thoughts. So let's take that 800 meters as an example. The thought that you're having is 800 meters is too far, it's too long, and you're never going to make it as an event. Your brain is putting connections together. It's done 400 meters, say, before. That was really hard. You worked really hard. Your arms and legs felt like they were going to fall off. You're making those connections and you're thinking, I can't do another 400 on top of that to complete an 800. However, your thought process is also trying to solve those problems. It's going, hang on a second, if I swim a little bit slower, I might be able to make 800 meters. Or it might be saying, I probably could just keep going at that pace because it's not like sprinting at 50 meters. So your thought process is coming up with these ideas, it's making connections to things that's happened before, and it's trying to solve the problems that's happening in your brain. So once you've had those thoughts, they become meaning. So you've now had that thought that 800 meters is really, really hard and you don't want to do them. So the meaning is you don't like long distance, okay? Once you've got that meaning, it then becomes like words. And once you get those words, they become quite internalized. So you've had that thought process, you've started talking to yourself about that 800 meters, and you have that internalization of words. And once you get that internalization of words and meaning, it triggers your inner speech. So you have that thought process, it's become a meaning, and then it becomes inner speech. So you've had the thought process, don't like 800s. I've done a 400 before. Double that's going to be quite hard. My goodness, I've now got that. It's in my head. I've turned it into words. It's become internalized. It's given me meaning. And now I don't like the 800. I don't like the thought of it at all. So that's the thought process that you're having. Once you've had those thoughts, your brain moves on to something called inner speech. And inner speech shapes our thoughts and our feelings. So you've had the thought that you don't like the 800 meters, and you'll begin to feel really nervous because you've been asked to race it, or you've been told to race it for club champs or whatever, or you're doing it as a time trial in training. This thought provokes feelings. Okay, so you're feeling nervous, you feel like you're never going to make it, you feel like it's really, really hard. And your inner speech is telling you, I can't do this. I'll never be able to sprint it as hard as I can. What's my coach on about? I've got to do 3 kicks and 1 arm pull off of every turn. That's 31 turns I've got to do. Inner speech helps you relate to the physical, the psychological and sociological environment. Okay, so your brain is starting to talk to you about things. It's telling you physically, that is too hard. I can't do that. You're telling yourself, you don't want to do that. You don't want to swim 800 meters, 32 lengths of the pool. I can't do that, you're telling yourself. That's a psychological thought. I can't do that. And then you got the sociological environment around you. So it might be that I don't like this swimming pool. It's really hot. I can't swim 32 lengths in this pool because of the heat. So sociological environment is all the things that are going on around you during that potential event. So we've had the thought. We've now started shaping our inner speech. We're talking to ourselves about it. We're talking our heads, through it in our heads. So we've really got this dialogue going on inside our brain. So the inner speech also helps us to regulate and control our behaviour. So at this point, we might get some of those rational thoughts. Hang on a second. I've done 800 metres in a warm-up before. It's not that bad. I know I can swim that 800 metres. I know I can go that far. I will be all right. So you start to think about those rational ideas, and that helps you to regulate your behaviour. Like, oh, actually, I can do this. I'm not going to sit on the edge of the poolside and start getting myself worked up into tears because I know that I've done this before and I can do it. So you start to regulate and control your behaviour. You might take a few deep breaths. Can be brave about this. And off you go. Inner speech also helps develop higher mental processes. So once you've realised that you're talking yourself through this, and you've actually started logging that you're doing this, because I expect most of the time you do this without even thinking. When you realise what you're doing, you can then start looking at self-talk, which is when you have internalised all of these feelings, you've got them in your brain, and now you're going to intervene. So you've realised you're getting yourself in a bit of a pickle about some of this 800. You've started being really negative about it. You've told yourself you can't do it. Now you're feeling you can't do it. And you're going to put an intervention in place. You're going to stop those thoughts and you're going to put processes into place to change that inner speech, to change your thoughts and your feelings. So to change these two things up here. So as that happens, you are your self-talk will be based on meaning that you give to yourself. So it could be that we say, okay, I am a little bit nervous about this, but I know I can swim 800 meters because I've done it in a warm-up. I know that if I keep my elbows high and my strokes long, that I can do it. I know that if I'm confident with something and I'm positive towards it, I will complete it. And you start to internalise and take on those meanings for yourself. This is quite a complex will. So I know for some of you in the lower squads, in squads 3, 4 and 5, this might be quite a tricky process to understand. But it's just to know that you have a thought, you start talking about that thought in your head. And then if it's a negative thought, we can pop in self-talk to stop you thinking about those things. I've gone into a bit more detail for squads 1 and 2 because I think it's interesting and it's good to know. So this is what self-talk is. This is the process of self-talk. A thought, inner speech when you talk to yourself about it, and then what we do if it's a negative thought, how we self-talk ourselves, and we have processes to change those thoughts. Okay, so what can you use self-talk for? What can you use the process of self-talk once you've realised you're in a thought and then you need to change it? How are you going to use self-talk? What are you going to use it for specifically? So there's different things that you can use it for. And this might be quite useful if you're setting yourself a psychological goal, because you might have something that crops up here and you're like, that's one thing that I really need to work on. So these are quite long words and you might think, oh my goodness, this is quite complicated, but it's just giving words to the different thoughts that and inner speech that you might have that you need to change. And you often find that people are quite habitual. So that means they normally have a certain way of thinking or doing things that then gives way to maybe negative thoughts or thoughts that they need to change into positive. So what can I use self-talk for? Overgeneralization. So how many of you have been to a swimming pool, say Hawfield, and you raced there, and your first race that you raced there, you got on the block, you dived in and your goggles fell off. And every time you go to Hawfield, you say, I never swim well at this pool. My goggles always come off. Now, that's probably not true at all. But that first race, or that race where your goggles did come off, has stuck in your head, in your thought, and in your inner speech. And you're generalising now. Every time you race there, you don't swim very well. So it's called overgeneralisation. And you hear a lot of swimmers do that. They'll have pools that they don't like. I don't like swimming at Bath. It's really cold and I always swim really slow. Okay, so it's an overgeneralisation. So every time you go there, this thing happens. And it doesn't necessarily always happen. So you might go to Bath, it's cold, but you still swim well. So that's overgeneralisation. Polarised thinking. So that is when something is either black or white, they say. So you look at everything in just one or the other perspective. So it might be that was a good swim or that was a bad swim. There's nothing to look at the middle ground. So it might be that it was a bad swim, but you had a really good start. You had a really good first 50, excellent turn. And it was just coming off the wall on the third 50 that you, I don't know, missed the wall or didn't quite get your feet to the wall to get a good push. And then it went wrong on the last length. So when you are very, very polarised, it would just be a rubbish swim. That was a rubbish swim. You wouldn't be able to have a look at the other view and say, actually, it didn't go well. It wasn't a PB, but there were some really good points to it. You just say it was rubbish. So it's called polarised thinking. Filtering. So often when you have a race, there'll be lots of different viewpoints on it. It was a really good race because it was a really good race because this and this happened. You did this really, really, really well. I could see you managed to put this into place. I could see this in your stroke technique. Well, these things happened. But when you filter something, it may be that you only hear that one thing. So it might be in your feedback, your coach says, really good dive. You managed to keep yourself streamlined. Brilliant dolphin kicks to the surface. You held your stroke. You breathed every 3. You just need to remember your dolphin kicks off the wall. And if you were filtering, you wouldn't hear the first 4 things that we said, the good things. You just hear the last one where the coach went, you need to do 3 dolphin kicks off of every wall. And you would say, oh, it was a rubbish swim because I didn't do 3 dolphin kicks off every wall. You would have filtered out all of the good bits and just taken the one thing that you were like, oh, I didn't do that. So filtering is just taking one viewpoint or one perspective of something. It doesn't have to be feedback. That's just an example. Okay, I can never say this word. Catastrophizing. So that's basically when everything went wrong. It was the worst possible scenario in every situation. So you dive in for your 100 front crawl, you do a belly flop, your goggles come off, you got a big red mark on your tummy, you started swimming butterfly, then you realised it was front crawl, everyone else was gone off in front, you stood up to do your goggles, then you missed the wall on your tumble turn, everything went wrong. And it probably didn't all go wrong, but one little thing goes wrong and everything seems to be the end of the world. And we can't get over that everything was wrong and it all went wrong. So that's catastrophizing. Okay, so personalization. This is a funny one. So this could be that, so you're in lane training and someone next to you starts getting really angry about the set, really angry that they're not making the time, really cross that it's not going well for them. And then you start taking that on board a little bit. You start listening to them and you're distracted by their state. And you start thinking, actually, yeah, I'm not making the times, or maybe I'm stopping them from making the times. I can't make it and I can't do this. And you get preoccupied by their thought process and what's happening, and you react to that in your own way. So you're taking it quite personally, what's happening for them, and taking that on board for yourself. Emotional reasoning. So this is when you base your thinking on your feelings, and your feelings kind of overtake. You feel a bit overwhelmed and a little bit hopeless. So it could be, oh, I feel scared and I don't, and then I'm not really prepared for my performance. So that's when your feelings, because you're scared, that overtakes your reasoning. You say, I'm really scared, I'm not going to do very well. When actually you might be scared, but you can still do really well. And self-talk can help you teach how to think, I am scared, but how can I turn that into how I'm going to swim really well? Then we've got blaming. Okay, that's when you think, oh, that was a rubbish swim, but the block was wobbly. It was all the block's fault. And the referee held us for really long. And the referee held us for too long on the block. And that's why I didn't get a good start. So anything that went wrong, you'll blame on something else. Maybe an environmental factor like the block, or it might be the referee. You might blame it onto them. It might be the water was too hot. I felt like I was swimming through treacle. So you blame something, a poor or a positive performance, on something that's there. Mind reading is when you rightly or wrongly try and guess what someone's thinking. So that could be a competitor, or it could be your coach, or it could be your mum and dad. So you maybe think that they think that race is rubbish all the time. That race was really rubbish, or they think you swim rubbish all the time. But you're only guessing that. You're not actually listening to what they're saying or having a discussion about it. So mind reading. Shoulds. This is a strange one. So it's kind of like what should be done. So you might think that before you go up to race, everyone should do a dynamic warm-up, that they should be really quiet and focused before they swim. That's how you work, and you think that other people should do the same. And often they don't. So when they don't do the same as you, it kind of puts you off a little bit. Everyone should feel nervous, and some people don't. But if they don't feel nervous, how does that make you feel? So shoulds. And the fallacy of fairness. So there's a danger of thinking that this is fair and just. So everything should be fair and just. So for example, you know that the competitor in the relay, you're in a relay race, and you are pretty sure that you watch them dive in the lane next to you and swim the wrong stroke, or start the wrong kicking stroke. And you are saying it's not fair, they need to be disqualified. However, you're not 100% sure. So it's about fairness and making sure that you understand that the referee is in charge of the race, and he's the person that says it's fair or not. And you're not blaming all of your fairness down to someone else. What you've seen, it's a bit of a hard one to explain that. But yeah, so it's your version, it's your thought process of fair, and making sure that it's not just your thought process of fair, is how is it in the competition, who decides if it's fair, and accepting that fairness. So it's quite a long list, but these are all things that you can use self-talk for. So I've kind of talked you through quite a lot of examples, because just by reading that, you wouldn't necessarily think, well, what's Trina on about? So these are different ways that you can use these are different things that you can use self-talk for. What we're going to go through next is different sort of methods of self-talk. So we're going to have a look at that now. Okay, so now we're going to have a little look at the methods of self-talk. So there are about 7 or 8 different methods of self-talk. I'm going to briefly talk through 6 of them, and then we're going to actually look at 2 of them quite in depth. Okay, and that is going to be form part of your tasks or your homework. So the first thing we're going to look at is self-instructional talk. So self-instructional talk is when you're telling yourself to do something. So what will have happened is you will have picked up an area from the previous little clip that I've just done that you need to work on, something that you need to improve, that you want to make better. And you might have picked up maybe psyching yourself up. I really need to get better at psyching myself up, because when I get behind the block, I'm quite negative. I think that everything's going to go wrong. I overgeneralise. My goggles came off in this pool. They're going to come off every time. So I need to work on psyching myself up. So that self-talk to yourself will always have to be quite direct. We need to know that we want to get the appropriate focus to psych ourselves up. We don't want the inappropriate focus. We don't want the negative thoughts. We don't want that overgeneralization. We need to work on psyching ourselves up, and we want appropriate focus, positive focus. What are our cue words going to be? What 3 words, say, are going to really make us switch and think, right, what do I need to do? So it could be positive. I need to be positive. I need to be ready. I'm ready for this. Come on, let's go. Let's do this. So you'll have some cue words that will flip that switch for self-talk. So once you've chose your purpose and you know which direction you want to take your self-talk into, and you've got some positive cue words, you can choose one of the following 5 different ways of improving your self-talk. Okay? So the first one we're going to look at is retrospection. So this is a mental recall technique. You're going to recall the nature of your self-talk on previous occasions. So when you've thought about a race that you've done before, and you're going to think about maybe after a major competition, and you should recall what you've done really, really well, and then what you didn't do so well when you were self-talking to yourself. So you can identify your good self-talk points, jot them down, and then those that crop up in you, they're not so good, they're quite negative, maybe that overgeneralization. I always go to that pool and my goggles always come off. You're going to jot them down, because awareness is the first key to being able to improve your self-talk, being aware of what you do with your self-talk. And then you can actually use your good performance self-talk techniques and put them in place for that purpose and direction, and think about them as key cue words. So when you did have a good race, what were those key things that you were telling yourself, that you were self-talking yourself through? So that's retrospection, looking back at races, thinking about good ones. What did you say to yourself? Think about bad ones. What did you say to yourself? What do you need to put in place when you have those bad thoughts? What do you need to switch into positive keywords? Think about the ones that you use for the good race and pop them down. And it's really important that you write those down. You actually put them down on paper for your goal setting. What are you going to use to turn it into positive? So there's self-monitoring as well. So once you're more aware of your self-dialogue, you can start recording things. And recording things is a really important way of improving. So maybe don't take every single race that you ever do, but maybe at the big races, say if you are a 100 breaststroker, so at your counties and at open meets, on that 100 breaststroke, when you get out of the pool and you've finished cooling off and you've chatted to your coach, go and jot down in a little notepad. And I always say to swimmers, it's really useful to have a swimming notepad in your bag. Go and jot down in your notepad the date, the race, the time you did, and then your thought process. What thoughts did you have behind it, before it? And then what thoughts did you have after? How did they influence that race? When you've built up a self-monitoring diary, you can then really look at those good cue words, those good things that you say to yourself before you swim. It's about having that self-awareness again. The next thing is thought stopping. Now, this is quite a hard thing to do. And this is what happens when you have a negative thought and you have to learn that they are quite harmful and they're going to spiral and you won't swim very well if you have those negative thoughts. But you have to learn to stop that thought straight away. It's quite a hard thing to do. And it is very, very instant. You recognise that thought and you put a block on it. So when that thought occurs, you should be encouraged to interrupt that thought and move on to something else quite quickly to distract your thought, if that makes sense. So you distract it and change it to something that's very appropriate. But it's recognising that you have that thought in the first place to stop it. So the next two we're going to talk about are the key two that we're going to look at, which I think are very quick and easy things that you can do that can influence your self-talk in a massive positive way. And I'm just going to jot some of those ideas up on here for you. Okay, so the last two methods for self-talk are the ones that we're going to focus on for the homework, for our tasks. So obviously the first part of your task is answering the questions about your self-awareness. How aware are you of your self-talk? What do you do for your self-talk? So I want you to have a read through the questions and jot down some notes about how you use self-talk at the moment. So that's the first job that everyone will need to do. Then there are two different methods that we're going to look at. It'd be useful for squads 1 and 2 to take a look at both of them. But for other squads, you can just have a look at one or the other. So the first one we're going to look at is reframing. And you've probably heard myself and Malcolm do this quite a lot on poolside. That is when you change a negative comment and you reframe it into a positive comment. So it could be, oh, I'm going to make a mistake and I'm going to blow it when you're talking about a race. The positive is, it's okay to make mistakes. I will learn from them. So you switch the actual thing that's going to happen, the mistake, from a negative, that means you're going to blow it, into a positive. It's okay to make that mistake because I am going to learn from it. And it's important that you do learn from it. So that will is a very important word in there. I will learn from it. And you take that away and you do learn from it. So reframing is a really good way of switching any negative thinking that you have. And I think it's really quite a quick and easy one that you can reframe and do. It's just getting into the habit of reframing and switching those ideas. So your first task is to come up with any of the negative ideas that you have maybe before you race or before you train. It might be that you look at the MVO2 max set and say, I can't do that tonight. On the flip side, you can be positive. I am going to give that my very, very best shot tonight. Okay? So I want you to write down any negative thoughts that you've ever had about your training, about your racing. I don't mind. Probably come up with about 5 or 6. Negative thoughts on this side, your positives on the other side. So that's your task. So you're going to flip your negative comment into a positive comment. Really, really good way of using self-talk. Now, obviously, you aren't going to be verbalizing those things necessarily out loud. You're going to be talking them through in your head to yourself. So that switch from negative to positive will all be happening and you'll be talking them through in your brain to yourself and internalizing it, making it become a belief. The next thing you can do is something called an affirmation. Now, an affirmation is a statement about what you want to do, basically, as what you believe and what you want to do, how you want to take yourself forward. It's called an articulation. So basically you're going to put it down in words. You're going to really think it through. You're going to write it down. You're going to read it lots. You're going to talk it to yourself. and you're going to start really internalizing it and believing it. Now, I've put an example of an affirmation statement on the email that I sent to you. It's quite a long one. I don't think you need to write an affirmation that's this long, but I think if you can have one that's 4 or 5 lines, 4 or 5 short lines about what you want to do, and I would just pick one race, one thing to focus on, what you're going to do, how you're going to do it. And there's some quite specific ways that you write those affirmations. So the important thing is that you write it down. Okay, by writing it down, you'll make those thoughts and those feelings and those dreams really concrete. They're down. That's what you want. They need to be positive. So each line, each statement you make is a very positive statement. They're quite brief. Okay, that sentence is very, very precise. You don't need to waffle, just a short sentence, exactly what you think or what you're going to do towards that event, towards the thing that you're going to work on. Okay, they have to be very specific, and they have to be kind of quite dynamic as well. So make your affirmation really powerful. Use your power words, okay? They have to be stated in the present as if they already exist, because that is going to help you to believe in what is happening. They're directed at self-change. So you know from that statement you're going to change something that is going to make you get to where you're going to go. And they're within the realm of possibility. So you know that everything that is in that affirmation you can do if you keep staying positive about it. Okay? If you keep saying those things over and over and over to yourself, if you keep reading that affirmation, if you keep self-talking that affirmation, it will become a part of you. You'll internalize it, and that will become part of your thoughts and your feelings and be really powerful and positive. So what I want you to have a go at doing is writing an affirmation. 4 or 5 lines, that is it. So it could be, we could take the first 4 lines of the affirmation that I've given you, and I'm going to read it out. I can do it. I am always good in this situation. I'm at my best when the chips are down. I'm filled with a desire to do well. You can just leave it at that. So there's 4 really positive and powerful sentences that tell me that I can do the task in front of me. Now, what I would do is learn those affirmations. So you know those 4 lines off by heart, and you think them through all the time. And it might be that those 4 affirmations are good for training. They're also good for racing, but you keep them in your head and you say them to yourself often. So those are your 2 tasks. You've got the self-awareness questionnaire that you have to do to see where you are with your self-talk and how you're going to develop it. Then you're going to learn how to reframe negative thoughts, and you're going to learn how to write an affirmation. So a couple of sentences that are very, very positive that tell us where we're going to go and what we're going to do. So you're going to have a go at writing your own affirmation. You're going to keep that and use it. Once again, you can ask me any questions that you need to via email. You can send me your affirmations, you can send me your reframing, you can send me your questions if you like. It's really useful for us to read, but if you want to keep it personal and something that you're working on, then that's absolutely fine as well. It's been quite a lot of information today. I'm quite aware it's quite a long one and there's quite a lot for you to take on board, but hopefully you're going to find it really useful. Don't forget to give us some feedback on the feedback form, because I'd like to know what you're thinking about the psychology. It'd be really useful to know. Okay, have a good evening and I hope you enjoy it. Bye-bye.